Okay, I think we are ready to go. So, we got things to talk about. Can you hear me okay, Billy? Uh-oh, we lost Billy.
I can hear you
Oh, yeah, we
fine. Yeah,
got you. We got you. Okay.
I just have my mic turned off. Sorry.
We have Bubba in the house, Bubba Husky. He's asking if I got pinched
Get pinched.
last Monday. I guess we weren't having we didn't have a pastor and atheist show, and maybe he's feeling like I should have got pinched even though I was wearing green.
I accidentally wore green.
Well, I guess the Lord works in mysterious ways, Billy. Bubba, did you get pinched? Did you want to get pinched?
I would. I, that's it. I think laundry works in mysterious ways. I
Well,
was catching up on laundry.
I mean, I at my house, I'm very lucky because I'm really bad at laundry. Like, I have catastrophically ruined things. Laundry, bad.
I
Now,
don't actually wash the clothes myself. The machine does all the work.
when I was a single man, I didn't do great, but somehow we made it here. Um, but Jessica calls herself, rightly so, the laundry fairy, and every now and then I knock out a tooth and just put it under my pillow and give it to her. Nothing in return, just knowing that I'm going to get laundry. Just,
But I appreciate the "I'm too Scottish to participate" statement.
I
I
don't even.
too am a little bit Scottish.
So you got your root beer.
I do. Let's see. Red Arrow root beer.
So today we are going to be talking Matthew 25:35, which, this is your specialty, right?
Well, it is one of the things that I have to deal with on a regular basis.
Right. So we've had some, I guess, interesting stories come out of this last week, immigration wise, and what the Trump administration is, implementing uh, some stuff that I kind of, I don't know. When I first came up with this idea, I came out with the video, and I was like, I don't know. I'm gonna take it to you guys, I guess, if it has to be religious, And it was kind of the reason why this whole thing was. There's my wife saying hey. But anyway, the point is, it kind of spawned this whole thing where maybe we were talking about this and just like, guys, I feel like you've got a bunch of things wrong. I kept seeing, like, you know, on my social media sources, where it be Facebook, Instagram, especially Twitter. Twitter is its own kind of hellscape. I got off of Twitter. I'm on Blue Sky now if anybody wants to join me there for that kind of content. Um, no, anyway, to get to the point, some awful stuff. We're going to read through an article that I posted a couple days ago from Time Magazine. And then I've got a couple of support videos and different things pulled up. But again, we're going to be talking about Matthew 25:35, and maybe, I guess I've got this right here ready to. Oh, that's the wrong one, actually. Where did I have it? Well, let's just do this. We're here, so. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. And, I'm an atheist, but this is, a verse that speaks to me, right? I don't have to believe in all this other stuff to find value here, right? There's a lot of value here. And with that in mind, let's go ahead. Do you have anything to comment? Do we want to read the full chapter? I mean, that's pretty long. Uh, should we extend some verses here? How do you feel about it? Uh-oh, we've lost you, Billy.
I think that probably is a good summary of it. Yeah.
Okay,
If
cool.
you pick what you just read, because, it goes into this redundancy at first, and then it goes back
Is that
and
a
says nothing
redundancy
to
or a
do with.
reinforcement?
Well, yeah, it does each thing at a time. If you did it to the least of these, you did it to me. And then on if you didn't do it to the least of these, it kind of just lumps them all together for you.
Right. Uh,
But I think if you read what you read, get the
but
point.
Bubba with the wrestling comment there. He turned face. He face turned. I don't know. Do you know what that is?
I do not watch wrestling of
Yeah,
any kind.
I don't watch it either, but I am familiar. It's when, a bad guy does something that the crowd thinks is morally right. And they call it a face turn or whatever. Anyway. All right, so let's read this article. Uh, on the night of Saturday, March 15th, three planes touched down in El Salvador, carrying 261 men deported from the United States. A few dozen were Salvadoran, but most of the men were Venezuelans the Trump administration had designated as gang members and deported with little or no due process. I was there to document their arrival. By the way, this is Philip Halsinger. He's going to tell us a little bit about himself here. For more than a year, I've been embedded throughout El Salvador society, working on a book chronicling the country's transformation. From the huts of remote island fishermen to the desk of the president, from elite homicide detective units to elementary school classrooms, I have interviewed government officials and everyday people collecting stories that would shock Stephen King. I've stood in classrooms full of happy students, which not long ago were empty because children here once learned early that schools were places to be raped or recruited. I've interviewed killers in prison and sat with them face to face. So he's setting up he's setting up like he's seen some things, right? He's experienced some life with some, pretty maybe interesting characters might be a nice way to put it. Maybe even like rough characters, I mean, when you're talking about some of the people that were in those communities when it was, super poor, right?
Yeah, it's interesting as he was writing that, it was reminding me of through our Holston conflict, we had a real relationship in South Sudan. And there's a book that was written by some of the kids that had escaped Sudan, and their journey that they had. The Sudanese government came in and literally firebombed their village.
Right.
And village is the right there, if you imagine huts and all of that, grass huts, etc. And these kids traveled across the country to try to escape. And in their journey, they came across times when the army was recruiting them at 8, 9 years old. They were recruiting these kids, and that's where this started to sound familiar, because it was talking about that they were recruited or kidnapped at the schools.
Mm-hmm.
and raped in that case.
I mean, I think really there it's just saying like, I've seen some tough folk. I've interviewed killers in prison face to face. I've
Yeah.
been at a place where
Oh, the work.
rape was commonplace, right? He's trying to say I've seen some things. As I stood on the tarmac, an agent with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's ICE Special Response Team told me that some of the Venezuelans had weakly attempted to take over the plane upon landing. It wasn't unusual for detainees to try to make a last stand, the agent said, guarding the doorway to the plane at the top of the gangway stairs. They began to try to organize to overthrow the plane by screaming for everyone to stand up and fight, but not everyone was on board. the agent said, cautioning me to be careful because some of the Venezuelans would fight once they were offloaded. And I get, I mean, we're getting some imagery here. This one was a really like whoa image for me, right? Just, I mean, these are some
All
decked
the
out.
military.
Yeah, I mean, these are some decked out guys, right? So I mean, this looks like we're bringing in Hannibal Lecter, and his entire squad. That's how many they need. Uh,
Hmm.
and, this is the American representation, obviously here. Even if not fighting, almost all the detainees came to the door of the plane with angry, defiant faces. It was their faces that grabbed me because within a few hours, those faces would completely transform. The Venezuelans emerging from their plane were not in prison clothes, but in designer jeans and branded tracksuits. Their faces were the faces of guys who in no way expected what they first saw: an ocean of soldiers and police, an entire army assembled to apprehend them. So, this is what, they come out and they're like, he's saying that he's seeing looks of shock, right? And this guy with his, his chains and,
Wow, look at that.
well, oh yeah. I mean, somebody's got to carry him. I'm not going to say this guy's any more worse than any of these
Right.
other
It's just
guys. It's,
that was
it's just a
interesting.
powerful image, yeah. And obviously we've got some rough stuff going on here. It's being documented. It looks like a lot of these images were them trying to keep their faces out of it. And maybe it was because there really isn't much of the faces of the, I guess, the detainees,
Right.
that maybe it was part of the agreement to even be able to photograph it. One of the alleged organizers of the attempted overthrow fought the U.S. agents on the plane, cursing the Americans, the Salvadorans, President Nayib Bukele himself, El Salvador's Minister of Defense Rene Merino, who had been standing on the tarmac at the bottom of the gangway, rushed aboard, dragged the guy to the gangway himself, and flung him into the waiting hands of black masked guards.
So, but on that, the making them hide their faces thing, because it looked like they were being forced to do that. If you're hiding their faces and they're not who you say they are,
I
they
don't.
can be identified.
Yeah, I don't want to speculate necessarily what it could
Right.
be. It's just something to notice. Like you
It
don't
could also
see,
be the
you know,
prisoner saying, "I don't want to be seen."
detainee no face, right? Detainee no
Hmm.
face, right?
Right.
This is a
Exactly.
faraway picture. Detainee looking that way, right? Blurry detainee, detainee pushed down. No detainee in the picture. Detainee pushed down. No detainee face. Here again, no face, right? All of these faces are down on the ground,
Oh, and getting their head shaved.
Yeah, I mean, well, the story is far beyond just getting their head shaved. Um, the
Yeah.
transfer from the plane to the buses that would carry them to the prison was rapid, yet it might as well have been the crossing of an ancient continent. I felt the detainees' fear as they marched through a gauntlet of black-clad guards, guns raised like spears of some terrible tribe. I walked the line of buses waiting to depart, photographing faces. A guard noticed one of the detainees, turned toward the window, and wrenched his head back down into his chest. So, like, he's saying he's photographing faces, but like we're not seeing any detainees' faces. So
Right.
I think there was some, yeah. Around 2 a.m., the convoy of 22 buses, flanked by armored vehicles and police, moved out of the airport. Soldiers and police lined the 25-mile route to the prison with thick patrols at every bridge and intersection. For the few Salvadorans, it was a familiar landscape, but for Venezuelan plucked from America, it must have appeared dystopian. Police and soldiers for miles and miles in woodland darkness. I mean, dystopian, right?
Yeah, and like I was saying earlier, it has that reminiscent of the Civil War torn Sudan.
Yeah.
It's these are prisoner of war is how they're being treated.
Yeah. And, I think the question that we're going to have is, are they? I mean, like, are they even what they, Trump and his administration
That's
say they are? The Terrorism Confinement Center, a notorious maximum security prison known as, I guess it's CCOT, I don't know. I looked at a couple of things about Seacott. Sits in an old farm field at the foot of an ancient volcano, brightly lit against the night sky. Spent considerable time there and known the place intimately. As we entered the intake yard, the head of prisons were giving orders to an assembly of hundreds of guards. He told them the Venezuelans had tried to overthrow their plane, so the guards must be extremely vigilant. He told them plainly, show them they are not in control. So, I mean, I don't think that that's like, obviously that'd be kind of what probably would happen if they said that. But the intake began with the slaps. So, slaps, like they started off like rough. I don't know if there was a fight at this point, but they're being slapped. One young man sobbed when a guard pushed him to the floor. He said, I'm not a gang member. I'm gay. I'm a barber. And the photographer, the story writer, said, I believed him. But maybe it's only because he didn't look like what I had expected. He wasn't a tattooed monster. So I think he's speaking from experience, as he laid out in the first couple of paragraphs, where he's saying this is not the killers in the prisons in El Salvador that I'm used to seeing, right? This isn't the
Right, and also gang, the assumption that if they're from that gang, they're going to have tattoos that mark them for.
Yeah, so I mean, tattoos. If we're judging people, I mean, like I guess there's all kinds of tattoos, right? But just tattoos, every young person in America has one these days. It feels like. Do you have any tattoos, Billy?
You know that more women have tattoos than men?
Is that really true?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm gonna take that for truth from where I heard it from. So
okay. Well,
it's
anecdotally,
interesting.
my wife has a tattoo and I don't. So,
Anecdotally, I don't either, but
well,
neither does my wife. So
no, okay. I was wondering if your wife. It's like, who knew? Who knows?
yeah, that's right.
All right.
Now
Well, I guess.
she almost got one once. Her and Gooden almost went and got one, but they didn't.
Yeah, it's a
You know, when you're
permanent
partying in Alabama, that's what you do.
partying in Alabama. I thought this would be
Yeah,
like at least a Pigeon Forge thing.
we try to avoid Forge.
Avoid the forge. All right. Uh, all right. Moving further on. Let's see. Inside the intake room, a sea of trustees descended on the men with electric shavers, stripping heads of hair with haste. So, like, here's the image. They're being held down, and just like you can see the picture. I mean, like, guys, like, you get this side, I'll get this side. This is some horrific shit. If you can imagine it, right? For people that we don't even know if they're the people that Trump and them say they are, right?
Right.
He was okay. So the guy who claimed to be a barber began to whimper, folding his hands in prayer as his hair fell. He was slapped. The man asked for his mother, then buried his face in his chained hands and cried as he was slapped again. Look, I don't know if gang members cry for their mom, you know, but this just doesn't seem like that kind of a character. After
You
being
know, the last thing
shaved,
I heard.
yeah, after being shaved, the detainees were stripped naked. So like more like, just dehumanizing, right? You're just a
Yeah, it's doing both things. It's humiliating and dehumanizing.
yeah. More of them began to whimper. The hard faces I saw on the plane had evaporated. It was like looking at men who passed through a time machine. In 2 hours, they aged 10 years. Their nice clothes were not gathered or cataloged, but simply thrust into black garbage bags to be thrown out with their hair. And it's like, golly, man, you're treating these folks like they're on death row, right? You're not even their stuff. Like,
Or Abu Ghraib.
uh, they entered their cold cells, 80 men per cell, 80 men per cell, with steel planks for bunks, no mats, no sheets, no pillow, no television, no books, no talking, no phone calls, and no visitors. For these Venezuelans, it was not just a prison they had arrived at. It was an exile to another world, a place so cold and far from home, they may as well have been sent into space, nameless and forgotten. Holding my camera, it was if I watch them become ghosts. And I mean, this is a haunting image
Yeah.
right here.
Yes, it is. Uh,
Um, yeah, go ahead.
there's a philosopher and theologian that Thomas Merton. He talked about something called mortification, and it's something that's used in a number of different arenas in the world. Um, one of those is the military. When you join the military, what do? They cut your hair. They make you look a lot alike. They put you in a uniform, take away any identifying characteristics other than now you have a name tag and things like that.
Hmm.
And it's used in that case, should be being used to create unity and remind you that you're a part of it and all of that kind of stuff. But it's also used with POWs and other prisoners where you're stripped away of anything that identified you as the person you once were. It strips you away of uh, any chance to be different.
Hmm.
Um, and it's used as a method of control and obviously humiliation, as you said earlier, dehumanization. Um, and I, I find it. This is what I was thinking as I was watching these stuff on the news about this. There was some video of it, and you see them especially started shaving the heads. Um, and of course putting them in the jumpsuits. But I didn't. What they didn't cover on the news was seeing them naked right there in that place, uh, which is another step in that because really, truly, and there's I don't know. Did they take pictures to see if there were tattoos or markings or
I
identifying
mean,
feet on the
I
person?
think in these pictures we can see that there's tattoos and things like that. My
Right.
impression is that most of the identifying tattoos look like I don't know. They don't look like this guy's tattoo right here. The one that like a lot of them look like they're trying not
Mhm.
to identify him in any way. So like no tattoos to be shown. But we got this guy right. This looks like a piece of art. Like somebody
Mhm.
like this is Bob Ross. Like
Right.
with this happy little
But
trees and like is that a gang member tattoo? Like what? So
that's right.
I've got some other stuff to go over here that's going to talk more about this that's related. But this is like the first batch of folks.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, you don't mean that we've already had a second batch? It's
Well, I mean,
just this.
we might have had more batches now. I don't know what's being reported and what's not being reported.
Right.
I'm saying that we're just started, right? So, well, I tell you what, let's go on with that. I've got a couple of other things. First off, let's just do a news story. So this is like I wanted to read this because this is like the personal like this is a personal story that we can relate to, right? A real account, with pictures and of what it is and what these people are going through, right? And
Right.
this, let's see, this I think everybody see that okay. Let's see, is it on the screen? Yep.
Yeah.
So this is just a CBS news report, but it's detailing what's recently happened as far as like Trump on immigration. 530,000. Did you hear that little like just in his voice? Like this was his protest. This was his entire protest.
The war.
Like just in his voice. Uh-oh. Cannot be heard. Hold on. Let's start it over. Thanks for telling
I
me,
was hearing him,
guys.
but
Well, you have a different feed. Hold on.
right.
Where's Where is it?
I didn't realize you were saying they can't hear it at all. I was thinking you meant.
Yeah, no. It happens sometimes when I'm setting this up. I forgot to do a thing. So one second.
Well, y'all could just trust us on this. That's what it was.
Yeah. Sorry, guys, for that minute of you
We
can
would
barely.
we would never lie to you or anything, so we're good.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't be able to hear it because I screwed that up. Okay, yeah. And where's my little thing?
Now to that late afternoon notice from the Trump
We got it now,
administration
guys?
to revoke the legal status of potentially more than 500,000 immigrants currently living in the United States. This as we are learning more about the Venezuelans deported under the 18th century wartime law. I'm joined now by immigration reporter Camila Montoya Galvez to help us unravel all of this. First of all, Camila, let's start with 500,000. Remind us again what that program was supposed to do.
The Trump administration, John, is moving aggressively to dismantle President Biden's immigration legacy, and they are now in the process of terminating a process known as CHNV that was set up by the previous administration as a way to reduce
CHNV.
illegal immigration at the U.S.-Mexico border by offering would-be migrants a legal and safe way to come here without the use of a smuggler and without the use of illegal entries into the U.S.
Okay, so this is something that was set up for legal immigration, right? This isn't even like an asylum thing that people say is abused.
Half a million people from Cuba, Haiti, Venezuela, and Nicaragua entered the U.S. under that process, which required American sponsorships from people who were citizens or legal permanent residents here. And in the next 30 days, their work permits and deportation protections will be lapsed and terminated by the Department of Homeland Security, which is warning that if these people do not voluntarily depart the country, John, they will be found, arrested, and deported from the country. In fact, the administration is saying that the people affected by this policy change should sign up to self-register on a smartphone app provided by the government and tell people that they will be departing the country.
Okay, tough to keep track of it all, but you've been keeping track, of course, of those Venezuelan migrants that have been sent to El Salvador. What more do we know about that group?
Well, not only have the deportations to El Salvador triggered this contentious legal battle here in the U.S., John, but also a debate about who was actually sent to that Central American country. The administration is saying that all the Venezuelan men it sent there, 238 Venezuelan nationals, are part of the notorious transnational gang known as Tren de Aragua. But we have spoken to relatives and lawyers of the deportees, and they are strongly refuting those claims, saying that their loved ones and clients.
I mean, you know, gang, the 1990s Bulls gang
have no criminal records in the U.S. or abroad, and that they are not affiliated with this vicious gang. And they have actually presented to us documents that do, in fact, confirm that many of these deportees do not have criminal records. I will say that some officials have said that some of them do have criminal records, so we should underscore that.
Oh. All right.
Then you have to decide, first off, what do they mean by criminal records? Because, so it's a misdemeanor to enter the country illegally. They were talking about, we're going to get the hardened criminals or the violent criminals all the time. This doesn't sound like they're dealing with violent criminals in the first part of that story. The 530,000 or the 350,000, I think is what I'd heard. You'd heard 30,000, I think. Those didn't sound like violent criminals. That sounded like people who committed a misdemeanor.
Right. And like I said, this is the first batch. Remember, we're just going after the criminals, right? Well, I mean, he's labeled them all as criminals, but even the misdemeanor, like, hey, we just haven't got the proper documentation for your immigration, and you've kind of skipped the line, and like, this is not right. So we have this. It's illegal. It's an illegal thing, right? But I don't know. The spirit of the United States let alone what we're talking about with Matthew 25:35. You know, the spirit of the United States is an immigrant country, right?
Correct.
So, you know, we were talking about white Christian nationalism, you know, specifically a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago to be exact. To me, this is just an extension of that. All right, so let's do. You're reading a comment. Yeah, yeah, because people were rounded up in World War II. Yeah, because you know the United States has such a clean record itself on
Right.
humanitarian issues. You know, but yeah, I mean, he used. It wasn't that he just used like a. Well, now the one that he used was like from back in. I guess they used it in World War II for Japan, right? But it was created in like the late 1700s.
1790, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So the next video I have here, this is a little bit longer, 10-minute video. This one is going to have less to do with specifically Matthew 25:35, but more along what we were talking about 2 weeks ago when we were talking about the Dave Ramsey stuff and just like the money behind it all, right? You know, like if to me, I just don't. When you see the numbers that is going to be reported, this is the Wall Street Journal, so I don't think that they've got like an agenda here about like the money, right? It's just like, is it even worth it to do it because of the money? Like we could feed the entire nation almost for what it would cost to do this. Alien Enemies Act of 1790. Right, Bubba. All right.
$315 billion. That's one staggering cost estimate for Donald Trump's signature campaign promise.
Hold up. So they'll detail all these, but like this is, you know,
signature campaign.
That's the three. Like this is 315 billion. You know what I mean? Like that's for all of what his plan is going to be. Or the estimates.
Promise.
The largest domestic
if we didn't do that, we could save all that just lost their jobs.
Right, like 315 billion to do this. And furthermore, I am of the belief that immigrants, illegal or not, hello, Dara, welcome. Sorry about your homework. I'm of the opinion that immigrants bring their own economy. It's not like the economy's got smaller as the U.S. gained immigrants. It makes no sense if you're worried about the economy to be worried about immigrants coming in.
Yeah.
But here we go. Yeah.
More conservative estimates are still enormous. One group puts it at $162 billion. That's more than the government spent on most federal agencies in fiscal year 2024. We'll explain why an operation of this scale could require hundreds of billions of dollars over the course of a decade.
Is it your plan to deport everyone who is here illegally over the next 4 years?
Well, I think you have to do it, and it's a very tough thing to do.
That means roughly 13 million immigrants who entered the country illegally are at risk of deportation, about 4% of the U.S. population. To put that into perspective, the entire U.S. prison and jail population in 2022 was around 1.9 million people.
Scale is difficult for the government to carry out.
Aaron Reichlin-Melnick is a senior fellow at the American Immigration Council, a liberal immigration group.
Trump would have to do more than quadruple current ICE removals of people arrested in the interior just to hit the levels that we've seen previously under Obama.
I think that you take a sequential approach to it.
So he would have to quadruple just to hit the levels under Obama. Who they called Obama the deporter in chief, right? When they were when that was like a thing to criticize him about, I guess. I wasn't a fan of what this was. I felt like it was always him acquiescing to conservative forces that were unnecessary. But
strangely, he did a lot quieter.
Right. I don't think either one of them's good, but like to get to that level, right? We're not talking about the level he wants. We're talking about what he has to do, right? And then it's like, but we're talking about in the total, 13 million people. 13 million.
Do it. You start with what's achievable. Let's start with 1 million.
The details of the plan are still being worked out, but let's say Trump does decide to deport 1 million people a year. That could still cost about $88 billion annually and take 11 years, according to one estimate. And that's assuming 20% of people would leave on their own.
Yes, it's expensive, but the trade-offs, I think, are well worth it.
Ron Vitello led the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency known as ICE for a year in Trump's first term.
Right now, the government is underfunded for its ability to detain people. To be able to accomplish this and the border mission simultaneously will require a reallocation, if not an infusion for resources.
Other immigration experts say the actual cost of Trump's mass deportation plan will be much lower than the American Immigration Council's estimate of $315 billion.
A more robust enforcement like the administration is contemplating may create significant economies of scale.
Stephen Camarata is the director of research at the Center for Immigration Studies, a group favoring immigration restrictions that helped staff Trump's first term.
Once you start doing it and you get an infrastructure in place, then it might be a lot cheaper.
Stephen Miller is all over
There'll
this.
be targeted arrest. We'll know who we're going to arrest. Where
This
we're
guy,
most likely to find them based.
Hold on, I gotta like clear my throat a second, just even seeing this dude's face. Ugh.
Yeah, and this guy, he's the one that says we're only going to go after the violent criminals, but in the next sentence or two, he's always going to say, but if they came into the country illegal, they're criminals, so we're going after the criminals.
Yeah, it's
and
it'll...
Dara's right about, I don't know if trillions is the right word for the amount that immigrants contribute, but
I think it is. I think it is trillions. Obviously, we don't know the time frame that Dara's. But there's
that may be true. It's certainly billions upon billions.
13 million people, right? If we started doing math, if they all have $100, right? That's 1.3 billion if they only have 100, right? So, you Googled it. So you have us right. You have us right.
Based on
Google's never wrong.
Investigative processes.
We're starting with the criminals, and we got to do it. And then we're starting with others.
Trump says dreamers, or people who entered the U.S. illegally as children, might be an exception. To make arrests, ICE officers would either identify someone who's already in a jail or prison, or go to a person's home.
Please, come to the door. The majority of undocumented immigrants are not in law enforcement custody. Most of them have never committed any offenses.
Arresting people out in the community, known as at-large arrests, isn't a common tactic for ICE. Vitello says it's more logistically complicated and more expensive.
Right, this is an efficiency problem right here.
Plan.
I'm not concerned that they won't be able to find them. It's just a matter of time, given the circumstances, given the availability of information, and given the resources in play.
At-large arrests often require multiple federal agents and take several days because ICE officers don't generally have warrants.
Immigration violations are not criminal, which means that a judicial warrant to arrest them would not have probable cause. They might have to wait hours for the person to leave their house. They might have to stake out a work site.
To carry out arrests at this scale, the American Immigration Council estimates ICE would need to hire over 30,000 new law enforcement agents and staff, making it the largest law enforcement agency in the federal government.
See, this is, this thing right here, we just got done firing a bunch of park rangers, Now, probably maybe not 30,000 of them. Actually, I have no idea what the park ranger number is. I know it made my wife really, really mad about that one.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Vitello says this number is overstated and that state and local law enforcement could be directed via task forces to help with at-large arrests, something they already do.
Having that referral system, having state and locals help ICE officers do their job. Better to have it than not, but not definitive in whether they do the work or not.
Then there's detention, the most expensive part of the whole process. It costs around $200 a day to hold someone in ICE custody. Congress has provided enough funding for at least 41,500 detention beds in fiscal year 2025. But that's
okay. So this is what I'm worried about right here, because I mean, I guess we're now getting into the cost of it, but like I'm talking about the humanitarian problem. This is concentration camps.
It is.
It's not nearly enough to detain 1 million people a year. According to the American Immigration Council, ICE would need to construct 216 soft-sided facilities every year for 11 years. Soft-sided facilities are temporary tent-like structures that have typically been used near the border. Anyone not physically detained would be placed on electronic surveillance, which costs approximately $4 per person per day. Private contractors involved in every stage of the detention process could drive up prices even more.
Contractors drive
Whose
people in
contract
between ICE detention
the private contractor can be.
Well, I think it mentions this here in a little bit. If it hadn't already mentioned, I just didn't see it. They paid El Salvador $6 million for, I guess, that one operation.
Well, they're saying they would need to hire private contractors for the detention, and the ones that were out with the ankle bracelets.
Oh, to detain no, this is the housing that we're talking about now. So El Salvador would be a place. It's not a concentration camp in the United States, right?
Oh, I think some of them would be within the United States that they're being built.
Oh, there's 100% going to be in the United States. I'm just saying that they're going to.
So,
they're already. You were talking about private contractors for it. I'm saying the government of El Salvador was like, yeah, we'll take your money and do this.
Right, but I'm wondering who the contract will go to do this part that they're talking about.
Oh, I'm sure that there's somebody in the pockets and the ears of this administration for that.
Right.
I mean, there is plenty of criticism to go around for the for-profit prison system anyway. Plenty of criticism.
By the way, Dara's providing quite a good information. She mentioned that, when it came to the income that immigrants are supplying, it's also tackling just buying things.
Mm-hmm.
The natural born citizen is twice as likely to commit violent crime. These things are all true.
Yeah.
I thought that.
I mean, again, we're not, as a society, we're not giving credence to what the United States has always been since it's been, the United States. It's been a country of immigrants. We are a melting pot. And if we don't believe that, then we believe the other thing, which is, no, we're a bunch of Caucasians that came from Europe, dominated everything, and then set up a bunch of things to make sure that we continue that kind of like dominance for that specific skin color. That would be the other way to look at it, right? But no, you say we're a melting pot. You say that we're a country of immigrants. Bring me your huddled masses, right?
Yeah.
Furthermore,
unless France gets the statue back.
Furthermore, yeah, well, right. Furthermore, I mean, we haven't talked to any about like I guess the pastor side of this, right? Which is an atheist. I'm just like,
let me address that. I think that one of the things that you are drawn to that text. Why is that? Because it makes perfect sense, first off. I think one of the reasons that a lot of people, whether they are leaving the church in general, not necessarily, there's a lot of there was a study that I read that was from the New York Times where I read it. Someone brought it into my office 5 or 6 years ago. I think it was right before the pandemic. I'm not sure. And the article there was a study that had been done about people who were leaving the church. And one of the things it said was a lot of people that were leaving the church, and not just like going from one church to another, I mean, leaving the church and religion behind, were leaving because what the church was doing and what they connected to, what they understood the church that it should be doing, did not. They repelled each other. And I think it is exactly when you read a text like this from Matthew 30:25, when you read that story, or you read the Good Samaritan story, things like that, and the greatest commandment, love God, love your neighbor as yourself. When you read those things, those are very core, basic things. And if those aren't core, basic things, then what are we doing in the first place? And the people were going, if they can't live up to this, what's of it all for anyway? And I think that that's a legitimate criticism of church these days. I'm sure it's been a legitimate criticism of the church at other times in our history. Nothing is ever unique in that regard. But it's certainly a valid criticism of today, especially if you're not already involved in the church much, and your experience of the church is really related to what you see from the news. And what you see on the news is these fundamentalist groups out there. We mentioned them before, the group
Westboro.
Kansas, Westboro Baptist, which is like the epitome of the worst people on the planet. In the name of religion,
what is it? Global Vision. We mentioned old Greg Locke, Dara's favorite.
Oh yeah, you showed me that one. That was
he's in Lebanon.
And so you look at all of those things and you go, well, why would I want to be a part of something that's that? And I've told you, my sister is an atheist, and she doesn't really like the term, but I don't know that. I think she just doesn't like and I get
the term atheist.
But,
she doesn't like the term atheist.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It has the theist in it in the first place, and she says, "I'm a theist of any kind," but it's without theism. But
sure, I mean, I get it, but
yeah, it's splitting hairs in my opinion on that.
Yeah.
But the reality is, what I've been really proud of her seeing recently is, in Knoxville, for instance, some of our churches, the United Methodist churches, and there were a couple of other churches involved, worked with the mayor. The mayor got a lot of credit, but it really wasn't the mayor doing it. And they opened up some of the churches that were old church buildings that had small congregations and big buildings, like a lot of churches in the town. And they opened churches during the really cold weather to be warming centers for the homeless and for other folks that maybe have a home but can't.
People who need refuge, right?
Yeah, people who need refuge. And my sister was taking soup down to them, and she was, she took like a, big giant gallons upon gallons, one of those big giant pots of soup down to one of them, and I thought it was, she was good. She was seeing there's a positive side to the church, and she recognizing that. She goes down under the bridge, and she takes sandwiches and takes some clothes, and she goes down there and offers hope to people. And she's not doing it in the name of Jesus or anything. She's just doing it in the name of humanity. And I think we have to agree on humanity. And so I think that's why you see so many people leaving the church in general. The way that study also pointed out that most of the folks that were leaving were Democrats. Not that really has anything to do with your theology. It does, in the sense that the more liberal you were, they were judging the church based on, this very basic truth, which is the church ought to be caring for people. And I would say that, the negative side of what my sister was telling me about her story on that taken down was one of the guys says, "Oh, you didn't need to bring that. You didn't need to make the best soup." And like, these people will be happy with whatever you give them. That's not the point. You give what's good. And people deserve a warm, good soup instead of so we all make mistakes, but I think that we have to err on the side of compassion and empathy before we move anywhere.
Right.
Over.
This is not that, right?
No, this is the example of the exact opposite of that, and yet many churches are supporting it. I preached a sermon a few weeks ago, maybe a month and a half ago now. A friend on Facebook that I was once in a community with, she owned a restaurant. I think, still owns the restaurant. She came here with her parents I think they went to Chicago. Her parents were, they came illegally, undocumented. She was an undocumented child. She is now a citizen of the United States. She is Hispanic, and she owns a restaurant, and she employs people. I know for a fact that she employs some people that were people that weren't really going to be able to get a job somewhere else, help in her restaurant, and as dishwashers, and and here's the woman. What she wrote on Facebook was that she was more afraid now as a citizen and business owner than she was when she was undocumented. And that's because Christian folks have said this is a terrible thing. So when I preached that, I preached that in the context of Jesus saying, I come to bring good news to the poor, release to the captives, recovering us to the blind, set at liberty those who are oppressed. And I was talking about empathy and saying, we have to have empathy first. You can rule out whether you think all immigrants who are here without documentation or not, that whatever end of the spectrum you're on with that philosophy, that political view, still shouldn't take away your humanity and be able to empathize with the fear that this woman has. And yet I got called on the carpet for being too political.
Right.
And somebody left the church because I was being too political. And I'm like, but if I was being too political and I had said something that supported their political agenda, they'd have been okay with that. So It's not that I was too political.
Well, this is just this is more of the cherry picking that we talk about, right? And
that's
again,
right. Well, it's that the gospel or the message of Jesus interferes and challenges their political agenda.
Right. But that's like what he's about. Right? Isn't it?
That's right. By the way, the person that was telling me in a meeting started to say, he said, when you started to preach about love, I went, what?
Right.
I'm like, if I can't preach about love, what the heck are we doing?
Yeah. What is this exercise? But I mean, for some folks, church is just that, though. It's a social exercise, right? Like they're not too, they have a feeling that they need to be there, but they don't have any like direction,
Yeah. And the guy that was complaining in particular, he lives in a neighboring county, has to cross over the mountain to get here. And I've seen him, come in and take somebody to a town south there that takes about 45 minutes to get to. He was in a town north of here, about 30 minutes up there. He drove 30 minutes down to pick that person up so that our secretary wouldn't have to do it because she's the neighbor of the person that needed a ride, and took her down to see her husband in a nursing home and brought her back. And, so he's a person who really does do good things and cares about people, but can't understand that, he has these political views, but he doesn't really doesn't comprehend the impact that they have on humanity, human beings.
Yeah.
And
But I
that's
just,
the
yeah, to
disconnect.
finish it off, yeah, it's a disconnect, big time. Bub, I just looked at your Stephen Miller. What can I say, man? Thanks for the message, Stephen Miller. He's got who is this green guy?
Green? Oh, I didn't.
So I want to see if I can. Does that? Yeah, it comes through a little bit. You're not going to see it though, Billy, because I don't have it. But like on the screen, it has a picture of Stephen Miller and some green guy that I don't know who that is. It looks like a Star Trek character, actually. You'll have to watch the video later, Billy. Or I guess I can just send it to you. Here, we'll do that. Since we're all making fun. I kind of lost my train. All right, so Dara was
By
talking.
the way, Stephen Miller was on today talking about Saturday Night Live and saying how out of touch they are.
Yeah. He's wanting to know about being out of touch, I guess. Dara, so to talk, like, I didn't want this to be like, I don't want this to be like bash Christians. I want to actually reinforce what Billy is saying, right? So I pulled up a video of a Greensboro church that, did some things. But I do kind of want to finish this video first with the Wall Street Journal. So we're going to do that, and then we'll move to that video.
Or
Sin
drive
City,
the vans after somebody's arrested.
Appropriate.
Detaining children would also make this process more expensive.
I don't want to be breaking up families, so the only way you don't break
Yes,
up
he
the
does.
family is you keep them together, and you have to send them all back.
Family detention is the most expensive kind of detention because the U.S. government is required to give people minimum standards, and those children need to have child welfare professionals on site. They need to have pediatricians on site. There needs to be a provision for them to get schooling if they are going to be held for months or potentially years at a time.
Vitello says one way the government could reduce costs is by repurposing existing detention centers like Guantanamo Bay.
A third country like a Panama, potentially Mexico, could agree to hold third country nationals so that their due process could be adjudicated, thereby lowering the costs and kind of sending a message down the pipeline that people are not going to be released into the United States to await those adjudications. That alone will reduce the number of...
I love this right here. The razor wire that they've just like, here's a spot we can get through, so let's just do it. I would like to speak just a moment on the people that are coming here from Venezuela, crossing rivers and razor wire to be here. Why would you want those people to be here? Those are the toughest people you know. Like, those are people who are going to get things done. That's crazy to me that, like...
individuals trying to cross the...
Razor wire is crazy to me right here. But, hey.
Yeah, it is.
...border illegally.
Camerata says there are over 1 million immigrants who could be detained at a much lower cost.
There are people with a final order of removal that we just never made leave. Those individuals shouldn't have to be held long. We can get them out very quickly.
After detention comes legal processing, which immigration law experts say is the biggest bottleneck in the mass deportation process. An
Bottleneck in
additional
terms of
10.6
time.
million cases would
We
require
have the
nearly
money.
2,000 more immigration judges and over 1,100 more courtrooms.
There is not only a cost in the immigration court side, but there's also a cost in the ICE side in getting these new prosecutors online. You need support staff for the judges, judicial law clerks, secretaries.
Staffing on both sides leads each case to cost over $2,500. To set up new courtrooms quickly, the government would likely construct tent courts, like those built in 2019 to implement the migrant protection protocols. This was when immigrants living in the U.S. illegally were returned to Mexico to wait for the duration of their court proceedings. They went to tent
Which
courts
I still
near
think
the
is
border to
inhumane.
virtually
That's a
appear
Biden
in front
thing,
of
but
judges.
You could do those hearings much faster, logistically get more judges and more hearings heard in a day.
As with finding new efficiencies in the detention space, that is another thing that has its limits.
Tent-style courtrooms in Laredo, Texas, cost about $16 million to build and $143 million annually to operate. Once a person receives a final removal order, they have to either report for deportation at a later date or wait in detention until then.
At that point, the US government has to actually arrange the removal. That would involve putting them on a bus and sending them to Mexico, but if they're from any other country other than Canada, that means putting them on a plane and flying them to their ultimate destination.
An operation of this scale could require over 6,000 removal flights per year. For comparison, ICE had around 1,200 removal flights in fiscal year 2023. The average ICE removal flight costs about $17,000 per hour. This number could go up if private contractors who provide ICE with planes and pilots raise their prices.
But there are other assets, right? ICE has a number of its own aircraft that are already in service today. The Justice Department, the Marshal Service, has their own transportation aircraft. The scale-up need could come from the military.
Okay, so here we go. The military. Like, Trump is so eager to do this. And by the way, Tom Fitton is a piece of junk. I just want to say that out loud. But nonetheless, don't get your news from Tom Fitton. He's a moron.
From the military.
Trump told NBC News in November that there is no price tag for his plan. Camerata says the cost will likely be spread out over several years because it would be impractical to deport even 1 million people a year, let alone all 13 million in a single one-time operation.
In this case, it's
what's up, Brian?
hyperbole. What I think he's trying to do is tell everyone, when I take over, the immigration law is going to be back in business. And I think it's going to have a big effect. And then it's going to be up to the public to judge whether he kept his word.
But getting enough funding from Congress will be crucial for an operation of this magnitude. Senate Republicans have said that passing a border funding bill will be the top priority next year.
Border security, more bed spaces so you don't have to release people that shouldn't be released, and more ICE agents to deport people who represent a threat to our country and shouldn't be here to begin with.
Republicans control both chambers of Congress next term, but it's a narrow majority, making spending on this scale no guarantee.
To my Democratic friends, I think if you resist rational deportation policy...
Oh, shut up, Lynn. They had that, right? I don't even know if it was rational. I didn't like it. But, like, they had it. But they wanted it to be an election issue.
At your own peril.
I don't know that Lindsey Graham can say what is rational.
Yeah. All right. So beyond the Jesus stuff, it's not even like financial. I mean, like if we have this kind of money to spend, if it is 300, if it's 160, like some say 160 billion, like with a B, that is so much money, right? You literally could almost like create a city for these people to live in with that kind of money. I mean, we're talking enormous amounts of money.
I was thinking about that show that's on, what's it called? Paradise. Have you seen this? That there was a big natural disaster that was going to happen. So this lady, got her billionaire friends and they built a big giant city underground and they have a guy and all. There's 25,000 people that made it in and all that stuff. And you're talking about building a city. That's what my brain went to. I'm sure everybody here's watched that show.
It is the libertarian dream to build a city and have it be fully functional the way they want it, right? But we're not talking about libertarianism today. But yeah, I mean, that's so much money, right? 360 billion.
Yeah.
So a billion, how many $100,000 homes does $1 billion buy, let alone 360?
Well, now you're starting to sound like Ross Perot.
I'm
said,
sounding like Ross Perot?
Yeah, well, Ross Perot did a whole big speech and he said we could provide everybody a house for the kind of money. And
I forgot that he said that.
We could end homelessness. And I'm like, with $350 billion, I think we could end homelessness.
Pretty much. I mean,
by the way, you know how you end homelessness?
Give them a house.
You put people in a home.
Yeah, put them in a home.
You give them a house.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be like as simple as like, here's a house. And, I think people get worked up over this idea, right? Especially when people are in this country, so addicted to the meritocracy. Right.
Right. And exactly right. Because there were cities that were doing very good work on ending homelessness in their community, in their cities, that were building apartment buildings that were, one efficiency apartments or one bedroom apartments, things like that, and giving people a home and then working with them to have a plan to kind of build them, get them back on their feet. Because it's a lot easier to help somebody get on their feet if they have an address.
Mm-hmm. Here's the other
Go
thing
apply for a job.
Here's the other thing that may drive you crazy about our system, our capitalist system. We throw so much food away, nobody should ever starve. Nobody should ever be hungry one meal.
Right.
And I'm just talking about the stuff.
And you're not even talking about. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm talking about like the stuff that the grocery store throws away from day to day.
Right.
I'm not talking about like what the restaurants don't use. I'm talking about just stuff that we
or what
like
doesn't even make it to the grocery store.
Yeah, there's tons of this stuff too.
Yeah.
But like there's a reason for this, right? Like, because if you get to the point where the study that I read on this was like, if you get to a point where it's too easy to get the free stuff, then you can't make a profit from the other people. But I don't know.
Right.
That seems kind of stupid to me.
Grocery stores are going to spend the money on this it sells, and what they find is if it's not perfect fruit or perfect vegetables, it doesn't sell in their stores. So Kroger and the other big companies like that, they're going to, go through and dispose of the stuff that doesn't look right.
Mm-hmm.
It's legal, but it doesn't look right. It doesn't have the right shape or color.
But none of this fits. Like, throwing it away does not fit within, the framework of what Jesus was talking about in Matthew 25:35.
Right.
Not at all. I mean, in fact, I think the first thing is about hunger, right?
Yeah, if those are hungry.
The very first, yeah, he didn't start with like the clothing. He started with the hunger, right?
Right. That's right.
All right. So I want to get to some nice stuff. So here's some nice. I mean, I guess it's nice. I don't know. This guy has a very concerned face, right here.
He does. He looks, or he's like, seems like a Muppet. Stan Laurel.
So this is a Greensboro church. This is I had to go to one of the local channels.
Turning to politics now, President Trump campaigned on addressing immigration. Many of his first actions have focused on that. One of them expands the power of immigration agents, allowing them to make arrests in places like churches. It is drawing reaction in Greensboro. WFMY News 2's Itanise McMiller heard from a pastor about the change.
Historically, churches and places of worship have been deemed safe places for immigrants.
We have housed a refugee family in our basement the turnover could be every few months. And all those people were here legally, worked through proper immigration channels.
Reverend Amelia Fulbright is the pastor at Congregational United Church of Christ in Greensboro. She says the Trump administration's new executive orders don't align with her biblical beliefs.
The Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament have really clear mandates about welcoming the stranger, welcoming the foreigner in your midst.
President Donald Trump's new immigration directives include ending birthright citizenship, puts a hold on the program that resettles refugees in the U.S., and would allow deportation agents to make arrests in churches and schools. The Trump administration's goal is to target illegal immigrants. Congregational UCC has helped immigrants since 2016, giving them the support they need to become legal citizens.
When someone who was full of frowns and tears and fear, their faces are now full of joy and excitement and love and being able to feel safe, it's a deep, deep feeling of satisfaction.
Steve Tate worked closely with Minerva Garcia, who was an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who lived in Winston-Salem for 17 years before getting granted residency in 2019.
She had 2 little boys, and we had a team of people who were continually helping her over that really rough time. And now she's got work and she's got a home and her boys are taller than me, and she comes regularly here and visits.
The church is concerned the new policy will put families who were once in Garcia's position in danger. Tonight, they held a meeting to create a coalition for immigrant justice.
Over the next 4 years, the need level would be far greater we could take on our own. The time is now for us to pull together. There's strength in numbers.
In Greensboro, Denise McMiller, WFMY News 2.
All right. So, just for some, the church. Now, I think that was it said an interfaith church. So.
No, it was the United Church of Christ.
Oh, I thought I saw where it said interfaith.
WFMY News, Denise McMiller.
Numbers. There's strength.
Back here somewhere.
For immigrant justice.
Interfaith. Coalition for Immigrant Justice. Oh, okay. So this is multiple churches, maybe.
They're working with other church, but if you saw it says.
So that's great. Right. So
If I was not a United Methodist, I would be a United Church of Christ person.
Oh, that's what you'd be?
Yeah.
Can we get some commentary on,
because they've leaned into loving your neighbor. They've leaned into, and always have leaned into welcoming.
Where Methodists have been bickering a little bit in the past.
Right. Yeah.
10-ish, 15-ish years, I guess.
50 years.
50? Oh, I had the number wrong. Sorry, Billy.
The language of incompatibility with Christian teaching for LGBTQ folks was in 1972, and the battle went on there till 2020, whatever year that was.
So Derek, you're saying there's so many churches that do amazing things. I know you to be a non-religious person, and Billy was my youth pastor, right? So these are things that this verse, right? Matthew 25:35 is, we were saying this, as I said from the beginning, you were a little late. This is a message I can get behind and stand in solidarity with, even with people that I don't believe in a lot of the same things in anymore. I would probably say, for me, this is I don't know. A force that kind of galvanizes a group of people that want to care. And I feel like that there are certain folks in the church that are galvanized to care, like this Greensboro Church of Christ, right? But I feel like on the opposite end, you have a group that's galvanized by the church to hate and are constantly looking for verses, even to maybe we cherry pick the love shit, and they cherry pick the hate shit, and that tells you all you need to know.
And yet they claim that they're doing it out of love.
Right.
I'm trying to, especially when it comes to LGBTQ stuff, they're saying, well, I'm just being honest with them about what their sin is and all.
They're doing them a great service, aren't they?
Yeah, they're really helping them. That's why the suicide rates are up. That's why some of these stupid ass laws are being passed, right?
Yeah, I've not seen the suicide stuff. I know this.
Suicide rates among
suicide rates among LGBTQ folk are up since Trump.
Kids, teenagers, not since Trump, since the movement of the far right,
the hateful movement.
It just keeps going, and it keeps suicide rate up pretty high among especially LGBTQ teens. Mm-hmm. Teens are the biggest area of suicide in the first place, because teen everything is drama, but for that's why there was you remember the movement that came out of the LGBTQ support system to say it gets better, it gets better movement, and there were a lot of ads trying to help encourage folks that I know that's bad right now, but
right.
And
I think this kind of line of thought that they would go with is kind of where the Pray Away the Gay programs came from, right? And
they precede those two things, but
they think that's helpful, right?
Yeah, that's right. You are evil. I had come in my office one time, probably 7, 8 years ago. He came in my office and he wanted somebody from the church had told me I wanted to come talk to you, and I said okay, and we arranged to have him come because he didn't want to go meet outside anywhere. He wanted to come to my office, and he came in and he said, "I want to talk to you about the gay thing," and I'm like, "Oh God, here we go." And he's like, "I have a problem with it because shorten the story here, he was gay, and he had been told by his father, and he'd been told by so many people.
You didn't know this as he approached you with it?
Did not know that as he approached me.
Okay.
And what he was saying
So he's
was,
coming out to you?
Yeah,
Okay.
but he was saying he had a problem with it because he felt like he needed to get rid of this surge in his life because he'd been told for so long that it was evil, that he was bad, that he was sinful, that he was, all the things, but he can't change that. And, so I
would
was
you say that he
about,
is as a pastor? Would you agree with those feelings?
That he was sinful? No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I mean, like you wouldn't
He
look
was
at
a
the Bible and be
human
like,
he was a human being who was told he wasn't worth anything by his own family, by his own church. And I, as a pastor, I saw that as that was where the sin was.
right.
Those people telling
The
him
people
that.
throwing him out.
Yeah. And I was
That's
trying
not
to get
being
him
good.
connected.
That's not being good to your neighbor, right?
That's right. Well, and also it's not only not being good, it's being harmful. And,
Well, I guess it is a further step from not being good.
That's right. Intentional.
Right.
Intentionally being harmful. And that's what you see too often is it's not only we just have a different view on this. That's BS most of the time. It's I want to get those people. And
purposeful harm.
It's purposeful harm. And we Methodists, John Wesley was one that used the statement a lot, do no harm. And it was one of our general rules, as it's called. And the medical profession, do no harm.
Mm-hmm.
Our job is to at the very least, don't do anything. And this stuff we're seeing is not, it's not, oh, we have a difference of policy on what people should be doing. We're trying to harm and hurt people. And that's what, when Trump said in that interview, he said, are you talking about deporting children who are citizens? Well, I don't want to break family. No, he doesn't want to break up the family now because it didn't work out too well from the first time. But secondly,
no, I disagree. I think he wants to break up the family. I think he wants to do whatever it takes to get the brown folk out. He wants to say that just to not sound as bad as he is.
Well, that's my point. Is he doesn't want to break up the family because that means he can send away more brown folk.
Oh, that's what you mean. Keep them together so they can send them together, right? He doesn't want to. He wants to end birthright citizenship, is what you mean in this regard.
Well, that and to say that if you were a child who was born here, and like you say, birthright citizenship, then we're going to deport you regardless of your citizenship status because your parents are here, and that way we're not breaking the family. We're not breaking up the family. We're just sending them all back. Some years ago, I was in Chattanooga, and there was a raid on a chicken plant, or I think it was a chicken plant, Tyson chicken plant. They rounded up 400 and something people in that chicken plant. There were a number of other raids that went on at the same time that were in parts of the country, but this one was in Chattanooga. And I had been coaching a girls' soccer and Hispanic girls' soccer team. And by the way,
I forgot about this about you. You dabbled in soccer a little bit.
I did dabble in soccer, and so there was one kid on our team whose mother was she got home from school and the mother was gone. So the other thing that people don't realize is we talk about due process. We know due process is a part of what it is to be an American. You have that right to have a trial. You have a right to be acquitted and all stuff, and you have a right for a lawyer. somebody to be an advocate on your side. They do not. As non-citizens, they are exempt from that right. So these people were dragged off, sent to somewhere, but we didn't know where. They didn't have to tell us where. They had no communication with the family. So they couldn't make arrangements to, talk to somebody in their family and say, please make sure that my daughter home from school today. Somebody take them. So there were places where children are left to their own devices because they're citizens. That's inhumane.
Yeah. And it's definitely not along the lines of Matthew 25:35. Right.
Right. And I will add that was pre-Orange One.
Pre-Orange One, yeah.
Sorry, I don't like saying his name.
Pre-Orange One. All right. Well, I wanted to just real quickly go over a couple other things. One, I think there's some questions about these. If you're apologizing for this, right? You're asking if these folks are actually gang members that the Trump administration is sending off. So I wanted to get another quick thing. I'm going to read a little bit from USA Today. And then we're going to talk about another Bible verse that I saw from a Facebook friend that I'm curious about your take as I present it to you. So this is a story, so it's going to be a bit of a personal account, or read like one a little bit. The immigration judge looked over the crowded courtroom and called his next case. Jefferson Jose, and then no one answered. Judge Joseph Imburgia again scanned the courtroom buried deep within a sprawling U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement detention facility in suburban Denver. Looking over the rows of men in orange or red detainee clothing, Venezuela migrant Jefferson Jose Laya Freites, who's 33, was due in court for a pending asylum and detention hearing. He wasn't there. Stepping forward, an attorney with an immigration rights group told Imburgia that Laya Freites' wife believed he'd been transferred to Texas following a Denver area traffic stop and then shipped to a notorious Salvadoran prison. Trump officials recently signed this is where I got that, the $6 million detention deal with El Salvador to hold U.S. detainees. So this is part of, like, we can also outsource this to, we can outsource. Yeah. Oh, I just realized that you can respond in chat that way. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I did. It's funny. It shows up like 3 times.
Yeah, it's linked to everything. So if you put it in there, it's just going to go to all of them, right? So yeah, it'll do it 3 times. But yeah, so like we don't I mean, they're looking to
Mango Fellini.
They're looking to outsource this work for at least a little bit. But
that means they don't have to have concentration camps.
But there's no tariffs on this, right?
Right.
Well, these are concentration camps, but just not.
Well, no, but no,
made in the USA.
That's up to them,
Yeah.
We're just shipping them there. That's
what I'm saying. It's a way to deflect it. Oh yeah, they're Salvadoran prisoners from Venezuela. What?
We don't have control over what they do.
Yeah, it's a way to She saw her husband on video at the Salvadoran prison. Attorney Monique Sherman told Imburgia. The judge turned to federal prosecutor Tenga Bernal for clarification. She said Laya Freites was released to local authorities. When Imburgia pressed for more details, Bernal said she needed to get permission from her superiors. I don't know where he is, and he's on the docket today, Imburgia said. The government needs to show me something about where this individual is. So, like, I mean, at minimum, there's some, left-right hand things going on, right? Across the U.S., people like Laya Freites have been similarly vanishing and reemerging in one of El Salvador's most notorious prisons. So this is it. This is the train that, it's planes, I guess, and boats, but there's little evidence to support the administration's contention that large numbers of the deportees are members of the violent Venezuelan prison gang Tren de Aragua. Reporting by USA Today last fall, found ICE, the FBI, and law enforcement agencies in state with reports of the gang's activity had tallied fewer than 135 members of the gang, while the Trump administration says it deported more than 200 members to El Salvador just this last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was confused. I was like, I didn't say that. But I realized that yeah, it was confusing for a second, Jess. We're talking about the chat for anybody's anyway.
Yeah, I saw that.
Instead, family members and advocates say officials are rounding up members of an entire nationality without regard for their rights, often picking men with tattoos, memorializing soccer teams. You have this was the Air Jordan tattoo, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Family members and their professions, not dangerous gangs. Speaking to USA Today on Thursday, Laya Freitas' wife said her husband has never been in a gang. They fled Venezuela and requested asylum at the southern border 15 months ago. The pair were released into the United States. You know, I mean, at minimum, this is a personal account of at least one mistake. But it sounds like there's tons of mistakes. And this isn't loving your neighbor. And then, furthermore, I couldn't tell you for sure. We don't have any data on who's being deported or whatnot. But if we're going down the Jesus path, and here I am, the atheist, saying this, right? If you're going down the Jesus path, like it didn't even matter if they were criminal.
And of course, their argument will be, "Oh, well, they're criminal because they were here illegally."
Right, and that's a further down the line thing too, right?
And I don't even know that they're checking that.
Yeah, I don't. Who knows? I just think that they're getting what they can get. I mean, sure, there's some criminals that they're getting. I don't doubt that. You know, I do believe that they're at least trying to go for criminals first, in some haphazard regard. For right now, but the problem is that we're talking about 13 million.
And again, they're doing it without due process. They're really not checking whether they're.
That's what I'm saying. We don't know, right? But the point is that 13 million, most of them are just immigrants that want to come here and have a life, you know. And the asylum seekers, you know, that come from Venezuela. Well, Venezuela's a rough place, and I understand that you want, you know, maybe have some there should be some vetting here, right? That should happen. But, you know, what we're doing now is we're just picking these folks up, putting them on a plane, taking them to a country that's not even the country that you said they were going to take them to, stripping them down naked, shaving their clothes, shaving their hair off, taking away their possessions, and who knows from there. Who knows what happened? Well, not just dehumanizing. I mean, these people, look, man, this is Salvadoran prison. Who knows what happens in a Salvadoran prison?
And that is the point, isn't it? That point is sending them as a threat to anybody else.
Right. And that was that one thing that guy said. Once we do this, less people will be coming. Well, okay, dickhead.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. All right. Laya Freitas was driving home from work with his cousin on January 28th when they were stopped by federal agents. Although both men had valid work authorizations, so they're valid, and pending asylum hearings, they were taken into ICE custody. So, here we are again, right? Held in the Aurora ICE facility for a month, the two were then transferred to Texas, where they told their wives they were being deported to Venezuela. But last week in Laya Freitas' son saw his dad on social media video posted by Salvadoran officials recognizing a cut on his father's hand. Laya Freitas' wife asked not to be named over concerns that speaking out might make her a target for immigration officials. So we have this too, right? This is... My husband doesn't even have tattoos, she told USA Today. It's a kidnapping. What happened to them is a great injustice. Yeah, it's kidnapping. But, you know, it's a systemic / government, this is fascism, period.
It is, yes. And it's using violence and threats and fear as its tool.
Any comments any comments as a pastor on trying to influence somebody with fear?
As I just said, it's very Christian-like. and I hope my sarcasm comes through. So in First John, John is talking about perfect love, and point out that perfect doesn't mean what we think of it today. Perfect means complete, whole, full. That's the definition of perfect means in the Greek in the scriptural time. It would be in the time of Christ. When they talked about perfection, they talk about getting 100 on the test. They talked about fullness and completeness. So John talks about complete love, full love, cast out fear, because fear has to do with punishment, and love is the opposite of that. And so to me, if you're using fear as your motivation, whether it's I'm going to scare you out of hell, which churches have used for a century, or this kind of stuff, if you're using fear to motivate people, then first off, your motivation is easily toppled if the person loses fear. If they find a way, if they find solid ground. The parable. I'm sure you know all the parables I'm talking. There's
all
a parable. That's right.
Billy, I'm the atheist in this. You're the pastor.
That's right. The parable of the sower is Jesus tells the story of the sower throws seed around. Some of it lands on good soil and lands on rocky soil. And there's one example where the seeds grow, but the roots don't get in deep. That's what happens with fear. The roots don't get dug in deep. So you're not motivating people you're just trying to get your way, and it's fleeing, and it's the antithesis of the Christian message.
The antithesis of the Christian message. Fear.
Yes, fear is.
I think there's some that would argue with that. That would say, no, it's the first message.
But they're wrong. They haven't read Jesus.
I mean, no, I'd say they have. I would say these folks have. I think that it's just a different kind of buy-in, to be this fearful.
But again, that's not what the Bible says. That's not what Jesus said. Fear is not the way that Christ motivated anybody.
Right. Not Jesus himself.
Right. And also not, if you're looking at the New Testament, anytime fear is brought up, it's always a negative thing. And I don't just mean that, that's a negative thing. I mean, using fear as a motivation tool is fruitless.
Yeah. Fear is the mind killer. Eli has a good head on his shoulders. Dara, did he get that from you or Greg? Greg is the husband.
He seems like a mean guy.
He's a mean guy.
Yeah, and that's the other part of that is not just trying to use fear to motivate. If you look at what's been going on the last couple of weeks, just the last 2 weeks alone, some of the proposals of new policies and things like that, they're just downright mean-spirited.
They are.
And I'm looking at a Facebook group out of Chattanooga. It's an organization that works with immigrants and works with folks. Are you familiar with? I'm sure you all know all of this stuff. It's the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department and many others, including Knox City, and also Knox County, have agreed to participate in Program 287G. And Program 287G, do you know what that is?
Do I know what it is?
Well, you're the only one that can talk.
Do I know what?
Program 287G.
Program?
I'm sure you don't.
I don't. Yeah, I'm confused.
So it's the idea that police departments will cooperate with ICE. That if they have somebody that they come in contact with that they think is not a citizen, that is not documented, then they they can report them to ICE or even be a part of the arresting process.
Mm.
And
Why
the
would you want to
problem
get
with that,
involved in that?
yeah, and the problem is that's not what the police departments are supposed to be about. Because so this was happening in
Well,
Chattanooga when I that's right. Well, when I was in Chattanooga, this is what was happening. There were people being Hispanic kids and members of the Hispanic families in particular were being attacked by their dogs because they had these dogs that were trained to be mean. Why did they have dogs that were trained to be mean? Well, because the gangs in the city of Chattanooga were targeting Hispanic households because they knew that if they broke into those houses, they weren't going to call the police, because if they called the police, they believed the police would turn them in and they would get deported, or they would have to go through, they'd get all this. So that the gangs knew that they were safe from the police if they broke into those houses. And so I was working with a friend of mine that really is much better at all this than I am. What they were doing was trying to educate and get the police to help educate the Hispanic community that was not their job. Their job was not to do it. So if someone breaks into your house and you report it, you're the victim. They not care about your immigration status or anything else at that moment. All they care about is getting evidence about the crime that is before them.
Should be.
And that's their job. And their job is to protect and serve the people, regardless of their immigration status. This program 287 would change that and flip it on its head. That means that you're going to end up with more crime. You're making our communities less safe, and you're putting people in literal danger, because then again, gangs and other criminals know it's safe for me to break into those.
Just ain't right.
So they were getting the dogs because that was their own defense.
Right. Wow. That's a sad way to have to raise a dog.
Yeah, it's also inhumane for the dog.
Right. Now I have some feelings about the dog right now as well. All right, so I got one more thing I want to talk about. It's not there's not anything really a ton. But over the course of the election and leading up to the election, social media was crazy with people talking about like different things, different justifications for the policies that I would say the Trump administration was promoting. I mean, and let's be real, it's Project 2025, right? Yep. There was no other plan. It was always Project 2025, right? So you had a lot of people, tons of us that were saying, hey, listen, this Project 2025 thing it's bad for a lot of ways. My main thing, obviously, at the moment was thinking about how this kind of, works with immigration and the kind of humanitarian crisis that would, deporting 13 million people, what that would do and what that would look like. And images of Nazi Germany and concentration camps, arise. Whether I don't want to say that one thing is exactly the same, but like we can easily draw similarities here. But I just wanted to have a little bit of commentary on like some of the verses I saw, or at least one of the verses. I saw a guy that, a guy that I would even call a friend, who, it just looks to me like when you go through certain parts of the Bible looking for a way to justify your own hate, right? And the one that he put, on its face, it feels like a really, a pretty decent, verse, right? And it was First Samuel Yeah, 16:7, right? So, but the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And this was used as a sort of a justification as to how don't judge Trump too hard, right?
Yeah.
Make sure not to judge Trump too hard. He's
So
a
it's
little
Eden.
rough around the edges, but further on in this post, it goes on to say that the real good stuff comes from his heart, and that there was also commentary about societal deterioration. So we're talking about immigration when he's saying he's for the immigration policies, and I just wanted to in my mind, if you're using this verse to I don't know, to make your decision for a guy like Donald Trump when he's promoting as you said, the antithesis of what the Christian message is, which to me is encapsulated in Matthew 25:35. What would you say to a person who uses maybe this verse as a way to?
So, a couple of things. First off, this is about whether Samuel would choose a boy.
Choose a boy.
This is this is about David being chosen the next king.
Mm.
Dave's the youngest.
So this maybe doesn't even have any relation to that. It's just you picked up some words to
So it is deeper than what using this quote just to say, oh, don't just look at DT's heart. It is it is this comparison of him to David, King David,
mm-hmm.
who shortly after before this, I think is when he stream paused.
Yeah, I messed up.
Okay, so it's just you.
I messed up. That was my bad. I hit the wrong button. Sorry.
Okay, so David was being chosen. Remember David and Goliath? That's the boy we're talking about.
Same David, right? Yeah.
Same David. And David also then became king, and he was looking out over the balcony, sees Delilah. David and I don't want to say Delilah.
I was like Delilah. We going down the Samson road now. Something happened,
Yeah,
Billy.
I didn't mean to say that, but yeah. So he sees this beautiful lady naked on her balcony, and he falls, he's attracted to her. And so what's he do? He sends out her husband, Uriah, and Uriah is told to, he's out in battle, and the people in his unit are told, when we go out to charge, I want you all to stay back and let him come out in the front, and that way he gets killed. So he has the woman's husband killed.
Okay, this is awesome.
And then people keep pointing to, in other words, David is a flawed leader, right?
Right.
So a lot of Christians started to claim, don't look at Trump and all that stuff because he's not a good person, because he's not really a great person. Look at it's like David. David was a bad guy. David made a lot of mistakes, and yet David was God's chosen leader, and DT is God's chosen leader. And
Gross.
That's what we have to look at. This what this is about, this text, using this text.
Mm-hmm.
It's equating DT with David and claiming that. Well, what they leave out of that story is after he does this, he then marries her, and I'm sorry that here I am, the quote biblical scholar, I can't even think of her name.
Well, we got the internet. We can just look it up.
I know, and I just am not. I got the Bible in front of me, and I can't find. Anyway, the point is that David becomes king. He has already become king, and he's using his power to not only kill somebody, to rape
This is
somebody.
enormous. This is enormously flawed.
Yeah. So
this isn't just a little flawed.
No. This
is very much like, you know, Epstein saying he was my best friend and you should have seen how he decided he wanted to sleep with his friends' wives.
Yeah, that's right. So after all that, David, then they skip ahead and say, after all that, God still chose David. What they skip
Abigail?
over. No.
Wait, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm looking it up.
I feel really bad.
I don't know it, so I'm looking.
I got Delilah in my head. I can't get her name in my head for some reason.
We should listen to the Plain White Tees. Hey there, Delilah, and really have to stick in our head.
So after all this, there's a baby born, and yes, David continues to be king and God's chosen person. But in between that, David loses his son. He repents. He recognizes he has sinned against God. He's sinned against, his family. He's sinned against Uriah. He's sinned against all these people, and he seeks repentance. And I'm going to try to do better. I'm going to do a better job of caring for the people and all of that stuff. And so after repentance, there is punishment in this case. He loses the child. The child is taken from him, dead. So leave out the part about repentance and changing his ways. When they talk about DT as David, they want to say, no, let him be what he is. God has chosen him. Just, BS. And if God has chosen him, yeah, God chooses all kind of flawed leaders. And that's true. The scripture is full. No, Moses was a stutterer, put little things like that.
A stutterer?
Yes.
The crime, the humanity.
That's right.
Him and Joe Biden.
And so, yeah, exactly. I just thought, I never, it's funny I thought of that until I just said that.
Yeah. I didn't know that. Or at least I don't remember it.
So it's that part of his story usually gets skipped over because it's so brutal, I think. But it's just that I had an argument with a friend from high school about this, and she was like, "Oh no, he's like David." And I said, "No, let's keep in mind, David turned away from his ways, and David changed, and David made a radical change, and also it was badly punished for what he was dealing with."
God decided to kill an innocent child.
Yeah.
Because David was not up to snuff in all the ways. He was a wicked man. So your innocent kid will die as punishment for you. Be a better guy.
I was like, yeah, no, that, you can't take that too literally and sort of trying to apply it to DT, for instance, because that would be wrong too. You don't want that to happen.
Right. There'd have to be some kind of willingness to change probably on his part. And I don't think that Donald Trump has that in him.
Bathsheba?
Yeah. That's it? How many did he have total?
How many what?
How many did he have total? Let's see. How many wives did King David have, and what do we know about them? Well, I'm not going to read that whole thing.
Well, yeah. Well, polygamy was very common in the scriptures.
Sure.
It's the most common form of marriage.
Hey, the Mormons, for a while wanted to keep it going. I'm sure there's some out there. What was his name? Jeffries or something?
Oh yeah, I don't remember his name, but
the one that was like on the run because he was like he was an on the run pedophile polygamist.
Yeah, he wasn't just he was a pedophile.
Yeah,
he was marrying teenage girls and younger.
Yeah. All right. Well.
Yeah.
So in finality, I think that a takeaway here is that what the United States is doing is the antithesis, as you said, of what Matthew 25:35 is about, what Jesus is about. And even an atheist like myself can get behind that.
Yeah. I think it's also the antithesis of what it is to be American. But
well, I would also agree with that. I think we said as much that, that we are a country of immigrants. This is moving beyond, the supernatural. For me, I think there's plenty of evidence that shows that immigrants have been a boon to American society only. I'm sure with every immigrant story, there is, you don't have, it's not clean. It's not like, the Irish that were coming over here, in the 1800s were all, squeaky clean, perfect citizens,
yeah, that's right.
Sometimes it takes, some, we were talking about roots, right? You got to get some roots in with some, some familial ties and some time. And, the United States should be a country that seeks to be as much like that Bible verse as it could possibly be, in my opinion.
I think that's a fair statement. I think that, first off, a lot of these folks want to say, well, we were a Christian nation, which is just not true. It's a fallacy.
Yeah.
That's not how our nation was created on the ideal of religious freedom, so that we weren't to be a Christian nation. We were to be a nation that allowed Christianity and other religions as well. But they want to turn this into, we were created as a Christian nation because those people were Christian, even though all of them weren't Christian.
Well, and furthermore, Christian principle is not something that's only found in Christian doctrine. So,
yeah, the principles that we talk about,
principles we're talking about today, you don't need Jesus to figure out to be good to your neighbor, right?
Yeah, you can humanist and think that same thing.
But that doesn't mean like I'm gonna be like, well, that's not the way to do it. I'm gonna say if that's the way you can get to it, if this is the way you get to empathy, if this is the way you get to a higher state of kindness, then by all means, Jesus is the truth, the light, and the way. And for me, I'm just like, hey, let's just be good. Let's be good to folk. So, I think that's going to do it for a Monday night Pastor and Atheist. Billy's computer is on the fritz for gaming. He had maybe some driver issues. I don't know.
I think
we're going to do it eventually.
I think it may actually have to do with my internet. We've got the Comcast apparently is coming out for some reason. I
don't think that's the case. You're streaming fine. Everything's it's probably.
Yeah, that's what I don't get.
It's probably the computer. Probably I screwed something up as I give you a computer.
It's also possible. Like I told you, we had an internet outage, and I have an extender here in the office, and it's possible that the extender didn't connect right, so I didn't have a good signal. So whatever's happened was getting rebooted. So I think we're good. We'll see. I'll try the other things. The one thing does work. I tested it earlier. So.
Dara, thank you for your contributions. Bubba, you still out there?
Yeah.
Is Jessica still out there? Brian Hill? Oh, Jessica said she's still out there from upstairs. That's funny.
She yelled down.
Yeah, she's coming
yeah,
down.
my wife. Yeah.
All right, guys. Fun show. We'll see y'all next week.
Go Vols, both sides.
Go Vols. That's right. Well, wait a minute. My dad will be mad about that.
Kentucky fan.
We're all from Kentucky. I have a split allegiance here, Billy. But
my mother-in-law is a Kentucky fan. You should see the poster.
Yeah, we'll have a chance. We'll have a chance to talk about it next Monday, I'm sure. So.
Yeah, well, right now Kentucky's got the numbers. So.
It's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row, and the Vols are good. So we'll see if the
Let's
Vols
go with
got
that.
it.
Yeah, let's go with that.
The Cats got it. It's just good basketball this next weekend.
Lady Vols had a great game yesterday.
Oh man, Ohio State took them down, 15 points.
That was impressive comeback from their, up 17 in a row. So
yeah, cool. All right, good night, guys. We'll see y'all next time.
All right.